right, you guys, welcome. Dan Gazaway here. Today I want to share a very simple story about how I started my baseball business. And I hope it sheds some light on what you're going through right now. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you just want to talk to more people. But I hope there's some insight in here for you. Um, a long time ago, 23 years ago to be exact, I was working for a company right out of college. I was selling weight equipment to school districts at a national level. I think I covered a handful of states. I absolutely loved my job, but deep down, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to work for the man. So what I decided to do, I was on this trip, and the guy that I became friends with, one of my coworkers, we were driving through California selling this weight equipment, and on our way to one of the appointments, I said, "Hey, Terry, I know you have a couple of successful businesses. How did you do it?" And he said, "Well, I just started." And I said, "Well, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to get started. I just don't know what I want to do." Does that sound familiar? To many of you, maybe it is. So we started talking, and he said, "Well, what are you passionate about? What do you know a lot about?" And I said, "Well, I know a lot about baseball. I've been a pitcher since I was 10 years old." And he said, "Have you ever considered being a pitching coach? Because back in my day in high school, I was a swim coach. I would teach swimming lessons to my neighborhood families. I would teach swimming lessons for $30 an hour in high school. And I always had money and I always had fun. The students had a lot of success. It was the perfect job for me at that time." And I said, "Well, Terry, I would consider being a pitching coach, but everybody that I've worked with, they're charging $50 an hour, and they played in the major leagues. Tom House was one of them. I think they all charge $50 an hour. I don't think I could charge that much." And we were talking, and he said, "Why do you think you can't charge that much?" And I said, "Well, these guys played in the major leagues. I didn't. I played a little bit of college baseball and some on a club team. I don't know if that counts or not." And he said, don't discredit yourself. Do you know more about baseball than the kids that you would teach?" And I said, "Well, of course I know more about pitching than they do. Do you know more about pitching than the parents?" And I said, "Well, I feel like I do." And he said, "Well, then you can charge $50 an hour." And I said, "Okay, well, I'd love to be a pitching coach. You really think I could charge that much, $50 an hour?" That was the going rate back 23 years ago. And he said, "Yeah, I know you can do it." So we had discussed this for like another 20 minutes, and I got really excited. I said, I think I'm just going to be a pitching coach. So long story short, on the flight home, I was like, I'm a pitching coach. I'm a pitching coach. I'm going to start teaching these pitching lessons. So on the way, my plane lands, I come home, 40 minutes later, I grab two baseballs. That's all I had. I don't have a bucket of baseballs. I had two baseballs, and I went to the local park where I grew up, Lehigh Vets Park, for those of you that are watching. And I was so excited because I knew I was a pitching coach, even though I never taught a pitching lesson in my life. And I knew I could charge $50 a lesson because my friend instilled that belief in me that I could do it. So thank you, Terry, for doing that. So I went to the ballpark, and there weren't a lot of people there. So I'm like, who am I going to talk to? I walked around, there are 4 fields, and I finally saw this dad playing catch with his 2 boys. And I walked up to him, I started a conversation, and I said, "My name's Dan Gazaway. What do you do for a living? How long, what do your boys do? What positions do you play? Do they play?" And he said what he did for a living, and that reciprocated to me. And he said, "Well, what is it that you do?" I said, "Well, I'm a pitching coach." He said, "Really? You're a pitching coach? My 2 boys they're pitchers. They want to learn how to pitch. Do you have time right now?" And I said, "Well, sure I do. Do you have $50? No, I didn't say that. But I said, "Yeah, I have some time right now. Would you teach my boys how to throw. I said, gladly, I'd love to teach them how to throw. So at the end of the day, at the end of that hour, I didn't know how to teach pitching lessons. I knew a little, I know a lot about it. I didn't have a system in place. The fact of the matter is that that's how it started. I took this crisp $50 bill that I got from this guy, took it home, put it on the counter, and when my wife got home, I said, she's like, where did you get $50? Because we didn't have any kids at the time, and $50 was a lot of money back then when gas was still $1 a gallon. Anyway, that's another story. So I said, well, I got the $50 because I'm a pitching coach. She's like, you're a pitching coach? What are you talking about? So she thought I would just maybe teach 2 or 3 students a year, and that's it. But I was addicted after that. I loved what I was doing. I knew I was going to develop better skill sets, and I would develop a system to help these pitchers along the way. I remember for a long time I would just go to these ballparks and print out these business cards and get up in the middle of the stands with 50 people in the stands, and I'd say, stand up in the middle of the meetings or in between innings, and I'd say, hey, I'm Dan Gazaway. I'm a pitching coach. Raise your hand if your son pitches. And that's how I got the word around until after about 6 months of doing that, then it just became referral based. And I've been doing that for 23 years now. I teach maybe 15 to 20 hours of pitching lessons every week. But I share that story because the people that I shared that with said, that's so inspiring. That's motivating me to want to start my business. It's motivating me to get out of my comfort zone and do something else with my life, and maybe be an entrepreneur as well. I think the key to that story is just getting started. If you have an idea, just do it and go for no. Just go for it. So again, that's my invitation to you today. If you have an idea, just move forward.